Changing Classrooms by Aaron, Andrew, and Jill. The websites we found our information from. First, when a student enters a classroom stuck in the 19th century, they are bewildered by the teaching methods. Students must sit in a classroom while the teacher presents in the front, usually standing around a chalkboard. With the increasing amounts of technology available to students, communicating with each other is becoming increasingly easier. Using Google Docs, a survey was taken at Kansas State University and found the following. The average class size was about 115 people, and about 18% of professors knew their students' names. Students completed only about 49% of readings assigned, and only about 26% of the readings that were assigned were relevant to a student's life. The average student, according to this survey, will read 8 books, 2,300 web pages, and 1,281 Facebook profiles. They will write 42 pages of notes for a particular class and write over 500 emails. The average student spends their day 7 hours sleeping, an hour and a half watching TV, 3.5 hours online, 2.5 hours listening to music, 2 hours on their cell phone, 3 hours in class, 2 hours eating, 2 hours working, 3 hours studying. That's a total of 26.5 hours. So the average student needs another 2.5 hours in a day to complete all their tasks. So a student has to feel like they have to be a multitasker in order to get all these things done. After graduation, a student will be about $20,000 in debt. However, most students feel lucky because they're going to be able to make more than $1 a day, unlike 1 billion other people living on this earth. Most jobs that college students will receive do not exist today, and most of the assessments used in class will not help the students getting these future jobs or dealing with the many multiple other problems our generation has to follow.
Okay, so the second article we looked at is called Changing Classroom Practices to Include the Project Approach. Projects are very complex and dynamic, but they are usually fun and involve a lot of content and product development. There are 3 primary phases outlined in the project approach. First is topic selection. When deciding on a topic, students will first generate a list of questions they have about a subject. From these questions, the students will decide which specific question they want to study, as well as the other variables associated with it to be expanded upon for research. This leads into the next phase, which is actually conducting the investigation and creating a representation of their findings. After the research phase has been completed, they can analyze these findings and culminate the project. The teacher plays a huge role in the project approach. It is up to the teacher to decide how much of the school day will be devoted to project work and how it best fits into the context of the classroom. Some teachers will change their practices as they come to better understand the underlying dynamics of the processes that constitute good project work. Some of these processes that all teachers should encourage are having students formulate their own questions, making a prediction about possible answers, which is called a hypothesis, thinking of ways to test that hypothesis, working with the teacher for potential ways they might represent their findings, and lastly, having the students take the time to solve the problems on their own through trial and error. It is important to note that these concepts are not easy to grasp for both the students and the teacher. Each step must be worked through carefully to make the project useful and meaningful. There are many benefits associated with using the project approach to learning. First of all, when a student is developing a product, perhaps something like a brochure, poster, or proposal, that places less time constraint and allows the students to become fully immersed in the material they are learning about. Projects can also be correlated to real-life applications, which will be useful for students in future work. When working on a project, students can work collaboratively with each other or work independently. Either way, this encourages the students to seek help and learn from their mistakes. Another way projects can facilitate reasoning skills is when the teacher guides the student to the correct answer, but does not tell them the answer up front. This is very important. Good teaching will help students understand what they are learning. Just telling them what they ought to know is not very effective. Overall, the reasoning skills attained by the students will be immensely useful for them in virtually all areas of life. Also, since project work is very student-oriented, the engagement level will be higher, which makes it fun for both the teacher and the student. So as you can see, projects are different from traditional approaches because they are so dynamic. It is this complexity, however, that makes teachers more resistant to use it. It takes the right attitude and very good teaching skills to use projects effectively.
Connecting the digital dots, literacy of the 21st century. Literacy used to mean the ability to read and write. This is what separated the educated from the uneducated. In today's modern world, the term literacy is more broadly defined. It encompasses a set of digital skills which separates the educated from the uneducated. As such, we now understand that digital and visual literacies are the next wave of communication. At a young age, the so-called E generation learns to create, manipulate, design digital media as part of their lives. Older generations do not have the same experience and often treat technology as a foreign language, using it as little as possible. Modern students typically enter the classroom with a stronger understanding of technology and its applications than their teachers. For example, a teacher asks for the fastest way from LA to New York. A student immediately loads up Google Maps and has the answer within 15 seconds. The hour that the teacher had planned for this activity is now wasted. As students are already familiar with technologies, educators should focus on connecting the dots between technologies and their applications. Some have even gone so far as to say America's economic future stands on our current students' ability to take and apply technology in different and new ways. Continuing with this idea, educators have to understand that competency begins with understanding of what mediums are and what they represent. Children must be able to not only find information, but be able to understand its intent.